Welcome to Turn Right Machine Works. My name is Keith, and we've reclaimed another section of our shop, and we brought in a new machine, and today I'm here to share it with you. My friends at Inventables gave me their X-carve to feature in today's videos. Also, I will be creating a project and creating a post on their website of that project and how you can create that project in itself. Well, this X-carve is ready to cut some material. In fact, it's actually already done a small test project through the basic software and just using a font. And I cut out a little project here, and we'll get into that as we go. This year, I'd say over 6 months ago, Inventables was in contact with me, and we started talking about them giving me a machine and doing a review and creating a project video and putting it on their site, and that's where we're going to be heading for it. This year threw in some curves for life and also for the ending of life as well. Vanessa's mom has passed away, and in between that and a real busy season, I was able to go ahead and put this X-carve together and in here. And it's kind of a little journey to get to that point, but I was able to take a few photographs and a couple little video clips, and I want to go ahead and bring you through that process that brought this up to the date. Alright, one day the boxes showed up at the door, and I think I had 3 the first day, and within the next couple days I had several boxes that showed up completing my X-carve machine. It comes in several boxes and it's fully disassembled. You have to build your X-carve, and it's a fun build. But let's get to, and you'll see as it comes along and what it actually entails on my building the X-carve or putting together my machine. Anyway, after I got the components, I started getting the itch of, hey, where am I going to set this machine up? And just as I went through the thoughts of setting up my plasma cam, I gave the X-carve some thoughts in setting it up, and I still have a few things that I want to do, especially after watching the very first test run, and I want to make it just a little bit more stable than I have here, and I'm pretty happy with what I have. I just want to make it more. I'm on a wooden floor here, so I have to do something a little bit different. First, I had the bug of getting in and creating a space for my X-carve, and I chose my junk room, which was pretty bad. I don't have a straight on shot of it before I even jumped in. I had to start picking up the ugly before I'd even took a shot of my progress, which still seemed like it was a long way to go by the time I was getting there. And I had to clear out the room first, and I went through and I found a lot of things I had in storage that I no longer have been using, or I haven't used in 4 or 5 years, and they're just like sitting off to the side. I also unburied an antique cooking stove that I've had for several years and incorporated that into my computer desk to control the X-carve. I had to clear out the floor and then put up shelves all the way around, and it took a little while to do the shuffle and weed through what I wanted and what I didn't want, and then I had pretty much a clear floor. Now the only thing is this clear floor had a hole in it, so I had to repair the floor. The hole in the floor was caused by rot under a chest freezer. I had chest freezer, and I used to hang fishing rods and all kinds of things in here, and of course I stored my fish and ice and you know, whatever else needed to be fit into the big freezer. And it rotted the floor, so I had to repair the floor from ground up. And then afterwards I had a pretty good looking room. I didn't have everything 100% organized and put away, but I have it at least capable of grabbing it and doing something with it and neatening it up. So now we're underway of going ahead and patching up the floor and getting ready to create a base for the X-carve machine. Now, after I had the floor repaired, I brought in these two rolling cabinets, and these rolling cabinets I got, Vanessa helped me procure these. I spied them down there at the carnival or carousel where she worked at in Hyannis, and they used to be in a carnival, and they were built for the road, and they were built to, I don't know what they actually, what part of the carnival they were part of, or what they were actually used for, but they have a cabinet underneath and a shelf and a pull-out drawer, each one with a real nice thick Formica countertop and a nice wood band. They are heavy duty, and I went ahead and took two of those and put them back to back so that I can access storage and everything else on both sides. It's going to be handy to have that storage space with items and things that will have to do with the X-carve in its future. It also creates a strong base to mount it. So I started building a top out of 3/4 inch plywood that is going to join the top flush across the top. And then I'm going to go ahead, I haven't yet, but I am going to put a piece of angle iron along the bottom on each side, mount them into it, and then have 4 jack screws at each corner, and then that'll fine tune my leveling of the X-carve machine on the top. Alright, after I had the top built, which I did short myself just a little bit on the width and length of the top, because I was using the wasteboard kind of give me an idea how big it should be, and I really had never seen one fully together or didn't pay that close attention to other photographs or pictures in the site and stuff, that I could have given it just a little bit more on the width and the length, probably more so on the width. The outside frame of this extends just a little bit outside, and you also need a flat area for your drag chain to lay on, so it's just not hanging in the air. I was able to modify, and you'll see how I do that as well as we go along here. Alright, after I opened up all the boxes and kind of checked out all the X-carve components, I needed to have a computer to drive the X-carve, and I looked up on the forums and also contacted customer support, and basically I just needed to have 64 bits and Chrome to run the open source easel program or software that controls the X-carve. And I went ahead and found a nice reconditioned PC to do the job, and I went ahead and I set it up on the old gas stove here in the shop. And after I did that, I went ahead and programmed it, got all my information into it, and then I was able to start having the online instructions to put the X-carve together. Okay, I got comfortable in a chair here. I got my photos on my Note 4, and we're going to continue on with our X-carve build. Now, the first part was the X-carve, and what I did is I took the list that they give you of the components. I get all those out, and I lay those out on the table, and then I'm able to take the written instructions and combine them with the parts that I have on the table, and I'm able to go ahead and assemble them in a nice environment. Now once I had the carriage done, then it asked for the Y plates. The Y plates actually set off the end of the gantry and drive the motors along the Y-axis. So it wasn't too soon, 2 steps, and I start actually looking at stepper motors to play with and hook up. Now the one thing that's really nice about the way I was able to assemble my X-carve is I had it in this room, which is not in my main traffic area of my shop, and I'm able to have the computer sitting here when I need it for the instructions, and I have the place where I can start assembling, and I can add a drop of a hat, I can go ahead and I can leave everything setting right in here and continue on, because every once in a while, like at the time that I was putting this together, I was at the initial rush of all the roller kits that I was putting together, and occasionally I had to make a run out with all the boxes to get them shipped out. Alright, so we start with started putting the Y plates together and start playing with the electrical already. We got to put on a bus bar and adding some electrical to the components right away, which it wasn't for me to ask why as we're going through the instructions. Just it kind of surprised me. You know, first off, you would think you almost built the whole thing and then you put the wiring on there, but it does make more sense once you go through it. And I thought the instructions were very well laid out. Occasionally, when you have maybe a discrepancy in your own head about something that's written and how you put it together, they also sistered each one of the sections with video instructions as well to highlight their instructions as well. It is a fabulous layout on the instructions, I do have to say. Alright, it wasn't too long and I had the Y plate, the carriage mounted on the gantry, and all sitting on the bench structure, and started developing, and it was neat to see it starting to come together. And anyway, one of my favorite parts was I got to that point, and in the instructions it says you should have an assembly that looks like this when you're done. And that's what I need. I need a little bit of self-humor there, but I also I need to have that once in a while. Hey, this is what it looks like now. And it's nice giving a picture like this, because you can zoom in and you can look at it and, hey, did I get that gantry rail in the right direction, or is it upside down? And you know, also it kind of confirmed that, hey, that face of the carriage is actually on that side of the gantry rails, and the gantry rail says X-carve is facing out and facing forward, and it's all a good deal when you see it all coming together. Alright, so we move on. We did the gantry. We put now we start on the Y-axis, the belting, and the Z-axis in that order. But the pictures I have here kind of show that spot where it was at, and that's kind of when all those three things came together while I was working the Y-axis, and I had pretty well the frame rails all setting on the board. I started realizing that my board was a little bit shy on material all the way around. If I would have made it just a square at the largest length that I have, if I would have made it square, I probably would have enough room comfortably to set this machine on without having to do the add-on I did. But we'll come down the road there and I'll show you what I did, just in case you have a surface that you're putting it on that you don't have that support over for the wire track on the outside. All right, so we start doing the wiring, and it's one thing I wanted to do neat wiring. It just makes it look so much better, and you're able to clean your machine a lot easier. Not just this machine here. I'm talking about my past experience on other machines that I've worked on and dealing with the electrical for that. And if it's neatened up, it's a lot easier to keep clean, and it's also a lot easier to troubleshoot your program. Now, they give the bus bars, they give you excellent instructions on how to get everything wired up, and I followed them right to the T without asking questions why. Just do it. And basically what you got is you got two motors running your Y, so you have one of your bus bars, you're going to have wiring coming off of one side that's cross-colored, and it's because you actually have a right turning motor and a left turning motor. Even though they're going in the same direction, they're facing or opposing each other. I'm just kind of like expressing things that I realized putting the machine together. So I had some neat wiring going on, and I was also taking little colored zip ties and color coding each of the axes, each of the motor and each of the axes, and that way as the wiring came all the way out loose in a pigtail off the end here, I knew the end of the wire and where it was at on the machine. It was just something that I did and made it pretty easy instead of doing a wire test after you're all done. As I assembled them, I marked them. On some of the wiring, the way it came out on the back side of the gantry, the carriage on the gantry, I wanted to go ahead and slip over on the motors. I went ahead and slipped over a piece of shrink wrap tubing. I didn't shrink it down, I just slipped it over so that it was inside a sheath of some kind, just to help protect the wiring. I chose to do that. Now it's time to go ahead and add in the limit switches. Now after you have all the wiring on there, they give you instructions on mounting the drag chain, is what they call it. And the drag chain really does neaten up the wiring on a machine really fast, because you see how many runs I have of individual strand wires, and when you get them all bundled up and you get them running through the drag chain, it really does take away a lot of ugly. Alright, now I've pretty well got everything made, put together, the wiring done, and now it's time to build the base that your X-carve is going to mount to. So I went ahead and set the framework and the carriage assembly all off to the side, and brought in the waster board. This bottom board here is actually called a waster board, and you can cut into it, and not that you purposely want to, but some of your projects you might want to be cutting out, and if you're going to use this as the sacrificial piece when you're cutting down through, that's why they call it the waster board. How much punishment it can take, and areas you kind of go in, and how much support you're going to have to mount the next project in there, all kind of plays in the same way as you know, holding stuff on the plasma table, and how much cutting you do on the plasma table, and how much dross is built up, or how much material is cut out of your support, all affects how your raw stock sits onto the machine. But anyway, you can repurchase the waster board. So one of the first jobs when you set up the waster board is there is threaded inserts that go into each one of these holes. So I spent a couple minutes screwing all those in, and it's kind of nice to take the rigid impact driver or screw gun and get them all in there. Now the waster board mounts to a frame section, and you square up your waster board with that frame, and it's all supported underneath with a cross support as well, so it goes right down through the center of your waster board. And then your outside Y-axis at each end bolts to the wasteboard frame, and that gives you your alignment and squareness to the wasteboard and its layout or pattern or design on it for helping you square out the components there. Alright, now that we got the wasteboard mounted to its frame, the frame's mounted to the rails, the y-axis rails, everything's tightened down and square, and all the electrical is done. Here's an overview from the carriage. We got both sides of the carriage. Then we have the wiring going in from the carriage into the carriage drag chain. And then that drag chain coming over and meeting up with the limit switch and the secondary bus bar for the y-axis, and that leads into the lower drag chain or the y-axis drag chain. And then all the wires come out the end, and the bitter ends I have all marked with the little zip ties that kind of color coordinate all the wiring on this machine. Now I'm ready for the electronics. One of my most favorite parts of putting this project together was the electronics, because it gave me a chance to experience it and what they have to offer for the experience of putting it together. I mean, you got a power supply, and you have an interface card for the power, and then you have a Arduino card, and then a G Shield card that goes in, and these components have all got to be installed and hooked up right and connected. All your wiring is going in there. There's a little bit of soldering. There's some pins to be put in, and there's some really fun stuff as far as, and I think learning is fun, and that's I think where this project's at. Is it gives you that hands-on part of the project, and I enjoy that. So anyway, let's go ahead and roll through my pictures here, and I took pictures as it was progressing through and showing the steps by steps, and of course I didn't actually have a picture of bolting the actual power supply interface PCP to the front of it before I put on the plastic cap, but basically the metal power supply, you can see that it has the screws and mount on the front there, and then you actually have a power bar that goes across there, and then in the enclosure sitting on the face there, you can see the parts of that card sticking through, which is the power plug, and then your two green plugs right next to the switch, and the switch itself was all on that interface for the power supply to work with the accessories of the X-carve there, and your powers and everything else. Now we need to put some brains to it, and that's where we're going in. We set up the top adapter that holds the G Shield and the Arduino card, and then we got a couple shots of pins that we had to solder in on the G Shield, and a couple of those I looked under the magnifying glass, and because at the naked eye they looked okay, but then under the magnifying glass they looked a little cold, so I went ahead and added some more heat to it and really seated in that solder. And we're hooking up our leads to our servos, and you can see Z, X, and Y laid out there on the G Shield. Now we drop in the Arduino card and bolt that into the receiver that sits on top of the power supply. And now those pins from the G Shield, there's two sets, one on one side and one on the other side there, and they have to plug right into, everything has to match up, right, perfect alignment. And that bracket and holder really does a good job of helping you align that in there. And then after that, we got the fan that sits up on the top, and it has its own bracket and then we bolt on the fan, and it has a guard on the top. And all of our wiring, we still have it kind of open laced, because we're still making sure that we have it hooked up correctly. And when you got the blue light on the G shield, I believe it's on the G shield, it lights up when everything is hooked up perfectly right or correct. Alright, so now I had the power supply just loosely sitting in a drawer and wondering where I'm going to put it. Of course, the leads only gave you, you can see it sitting here and it's sitting in the drawer here, and it only gives you leads for this. Well, the cabinets I want for storage, and I don't want any traffic or electrical around the base of this thing. And so I came up with the mounting of the power supply up on the mast here. All right, we got our power supply sitting here hooked up and ready to rock and roll. Now let's see if we can have some motion. Now I had a little bit of problems initially just getting going, but I did a little video clip here, and I'm gonna let this roll, and this is as it was at that moment when I finally got the thing to create motion. Alright, I actually got this thing to actually start moving just a few seconds ago. Now I had a couple issues on just getting the Arduino card and everything else to be recognized by the computer, and I had to go through a few things, and one of the things was the USB. The Arduino card is powered by the USB plug, and then when you plug in the controller on top of that, it drains off the current. So what I did is I actually put a booster in on there. Then the computer was recognizing it. Then I went, and the ESO program wasn't recognizing it because I was missing a GRBL file in there, and I had to reflash the Arduino card itself, and it took a little bit of time doing that. In between my jobs, I come in here and I try not to get discouraged, so I just went a little bit at a time. But anyway, I got past, and now our ESO program is recognizing the X-carve, and I've checked all of these. Yes, and I am getting this, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to touch each one of these here because I can still control it, and it gives a little burst of direction. Alright, and the other direction. Every one of my wires are connected, and it'll come back, and then up and down on the Z-axis. Alright, so I'm progressing on this, and I'm a happy camper because now I know that I'm actually able to go ahead and fully control this. Now I'm going to finish getting acquainted with my piece of equipment here, and then I'm going to finish getting the rest of the stuff that I want to have. I want overhead lighting in here. I got to bring in a vacuum system, and I'm going to go ahead and get a few other things going in here so that this thing is mounted down and is solid and is, up to my standards. And then we're going to start playing with it. But I just wanted to touch bases with you guys. I packaged up and I sent out some more rollers. I ordered some more material for the right rollers. I have a couple jobs going on in the shop, some shafting. I have another emergency coming in tomorrow from one of my actual friends from one of my favorite marinas, and not the one with the rocks. Okay, this is another job that I'll be looking after. So anyway, the X-carve is progressing, and I just wanted to touch bases. This is the first day Vanessa and I have been by ourselves, and I'm going to be breaking here for a little bit, and we're going to go out and have a little seafood dinner, and I'm going to feel a lot more comfortable and a little more enjoyable knowing that I have completed my ultimate goal, and that is to get this assembled and actually be able to control it. And the computer is you know, going to be adequate for the job. So there's the highlight on today's major event and improvement. Okay, just in case this puts this in motion here, I decided to go ahead and start a video clip. But I just set the control for the spindle in the manual because I want to set that. I can change that later on, I guess. And this is limit switch setup. And does your machine have limit switches? And yes, enable homing. So I'm gonna start homing sequence. Should move the machine towards the limit switches. Press stop immediately if the axis move in the wrong directions, and continue moving after hitting. All right, so here we go. This is pretty cool. All right, and I'm just gonna bring this down here. And this one here is going to be right there. Gonna hit that one first. And of course I'll set these or zero these in when I calibrate it for 0, but as long as they're functioning now, and be ready to hit the switch if it doesn't. All right. Well, good. Hooray, you're finished setting up your machine. Run the test carve. All right, we're moving on to the next series of pictures that I have here, and this happens to be kind of taking care of some of the accessories that I want on my X-carve machine. And before I actually started getting into all of that, I was still playing around late one night, and I had I had shut off the machine. I was getting ready to reinitiate it. When you first start up your machine and you set up and connect your computer to control your X-carve, it's going in to test your leads, and when it does, it bypasses your limit switches. Well, it didn't take me long to figure out that when you are jogging your machine and your limit switches are bypassed, make sure that your travel is in a runnable area, not up against the limit switch, because the head came up and smashed up the limit switch, and basically crushed the switch itself. And so I needed to get a new switch, and immediately I got on the phone with Radio Shack and ran down there, and they had one in the drawer, but they didn't have the roller tip on it. They had the right amperage, the right size switch and everything else, just not the roller tip. So I took a piece of high heat, high bond tape, and I stuck that arm right on there. I cut it off with my snips, and I sanded it a little bit, deburred it, and cut a real skinny piece of that high bond tape, and I put it on there, and it's still working fine. I have a couple micro switches already on the spare side there, and this in here is just amazing me that it's still going and working fine in this mode here. So I really wanted to see this thing run through a cycle, so I went ahead and figured out that I can go ahead and trick it into thinking that it was cutting, and set it up so that its home start spot in height relevance and everything else. I was able to run it through the motions, and here's the video of doing that. Alright, I'm about ready to call it quits out here tonight, but I actually accomplished getting something I wanted to draw, something I want to cut out, and I got it loaded into the program. And right now I don't have a bit in there, but I falsely set it to cut at a certain height and a certain parameter with tooling and on a certain program in the software, and got it running through all the motions as if it was cutting. I still want to hook up my vacuums and stuff. I don't want to cut anything until I actually have capabilities of keeping the mess under control. But everything is functioning very nice, very smooth. I would just change the depth a little bit for the continuation on another pass around the path it's on. Alright, can't wait to see it start cutting something. Now that I finished satisfying myself on seeing this thing run, I was really excited and I wanted to hurry up and get and work on the rest of the things that I needed to get done so that I didn't lose interest in it. Anytime that you're setting up an item and then you start getting it running and you put chips flying in the air or whatever to say start on a project, you start using it, you tend to let things slide. And I find that when you're putting something together, get everything done that you need or want to get done as far as prepping for your project so that you can enjoy your machine a little bit better after you have it. You start rolling with it, and I'm getting ready to roll with it now, and I'm really happy, especially the first job that we'll be coming up to. And I cut almost 2 hours worth of time on here, and there was maybe less than a quarter teaspoon of little debris here that you could, if you collected all of it, you'd have less than a quarter teaspoon in it. All right, so we strung up some electrical. We got the metal MC here, and here's a few pictures of my run, and basically I brought it over from another piece of conduit, brought it over so I had solid electrical and a good quality current in the this area here, so that I had new light switch in here. I have 4 nice 4-foot fluorescents up on the ceiling now, and I was able to put those up there and have a switch that I can walk over to the wall, and I wasn't plugging in extension cords and none of that was that I was able to trip on. Alright, the next thing that I needed to do was get a vacuum, and I picked up this hose and a shop vac at down the road here at Benny's, and the shop vac brand was I like it. It's pretty stout little machine. This hose here is basically a pool hose for vacuuming out swimming pools. Has a little swivel on the end here. Kind of works out nice as this thing is rolling around. It has that application there. It didn't have a wire running through it like some of the spark arresting vacuum hoses, high dollar units. This hose was real cheap. I think I paid probably $10, $12 for 20 foot or something like that for this length of hose here. And this is a copper 18 gauge wire, and I wrapped it around nice and uniform the full length of the vacuum hose, and then I spliced into the middle of it there, and I have it grounded on my conduit, which goes back and grounds to the main ground rod. and we're gonna let it fly like that. I don't see any problems with it. If I do have any problems with it, then we'll do something different. I actually have multiple grounding rods in this shop, and I have like my plasma cam, that table, and all that electronics over in that section over there has got a separate grounding rod. Then this system here is on the main grounding rod, and they're basically at two different areas of the shop. So anyway, we're running it like that right now, and we'll see. I don't expect any problems with it. I put the vacuum in another room, even though it's only divided by a piece of visqueen, and the shelving over here on the side here, it is not really in here, so it's not like it's blaring in your ear while you're in here operating. I think the spindle makes just a little bit more noise than the vacuum does anyhow. Now, while I was putting this together, I have been pointed out by some of my viewers, my fans, and pointing out a couple different things. This drag chain back here, when it's extremely over in this direction right here, it does have a lot of weight over here, and it does want to hang down and sag. And there has been a couple forums and also a couple videos where guys have added in a pad or a bar in underneath here, and I just cut one out real quick on the plasma cam with the same matching hole pattern, and it just gives a little bit more support on this, and then this just does not sag down into this lower area here, so it doesn't take up any of your room in height or altitude of your components that you're machining out down on here or carving on the table. And it's not going to put excess wear back here at the joint where it makes the contact. So and that's just a piece of 16th aluminum, and it's about 6 inches long there, and it supports that very nice. It does have a little bit of a spring action to it. It does take about a dip of about 100 thousandths out here at the very end, but it's gradual through here. It's not creating that sharp drop there anymore. So I like that suggestion that was brought to me. It wasn't my idea, but I did incorporate it. As soon as I saw it, it was a no-brainer. Okay, it's just, gonna add that. All right, here's a view down in on the root of one of my projects I'm going to be working on here as we go. And these are just really tool paths, and I'll show you actually some pictures of the tool paths that I actually had while we were doing the project that we first started. But that was looking down in the bottom, and the more it looks like a hurricane or whatever, and that's basically the valley that's cutting out, and it's actually a 3D view of it, and that's just a million tool paths on that project there. And there's the next wall over, so that kind of just shows you can get right down into the actual part and watch your tool path. So that was kind of neat about the program and the software that we got going on here. And I was playing with this during non-productive times, building the accessories that I wanted to add on here. And I kind of discovered that, and when I did, I went ahead and had a little fun there, and I did post a few pictures of it. Now, I really can't get the camera back far enough to get this angle to show you the mount that I have the power supply on, but it starts down there and then comes up here, and the box it sits in is perforated aluminum sheeting, and it fully breathes and lets the fans and the suction and the airflow keep that really nice and cool. Now, to get this bend on this aluminum, this is anodized aluminum pipe, and this is a anodized flange. This is some extra hardware and materials that I have in the marine trade from building arches and towers and this kind of thing. And so we go into the other room, and I'm actually using my bender, and I got it set up on the side of the press, and it's just an attachment, a hydraulic cylinder, and the head it was the only thing I had. I made everything else to go and create this bend, including the dies. And so it's a one push bend, and I set the bender up for this material and pressed it until I created that curve, and I had it 90 degrees, and you always have a little bit extra length on here, and then I have to cut that section off there. So we went and we bent this. There's only one bend in it, the lower one here, and then I kind of planned out where I wanted this flange to mount to the side of the cabinet, and I held the pipe up to the cabinet and kind of figured out how high I wanted it, and then I took it into the weld section of the shop, and I heliarched the flange to the stem, and then I stood it up and I put another flange up at the top. Alright, so the anodized pipe comes up here with a flange, and this box, perforated aluminum box, I cut out on the plasma table, and here's a glimpse of that being cut out. Alright, this is creating the little enclosure that I'm going to be putting the controller for the X-carve in, and I'm going to make the box it slips into out of perforated aluminum, 1/16 thick. Here we go with the first part. Cover. I'm only running draft on one side, so we got a little smoky at the end. Nice and clean, almost as good as a shear. Just a little tiny bit of dross on the backside, nothing to really be measurable. All right, so I like that. All right, now this other one, we wanted to have this edge as our edge on the part, so we're going to go ahead and I think we're going to jog this up just a little bit, because I see that we were real close to the bottom there. And I'm going to go ahead and move. All right, there we go. Excellent. Okay, on to the brake. Okay, now I was able to bring this back in after we welded it up, and I was able to mount it to the side of the cabinet here. And how was I going to attach this? Well, I didn't want to create any weld. You can't weld on this really thin gauge stuff here. It's going to warp or blow through. And I didn't want to create any other type of mess here, and I needed it flat on the bottom, so my power supply just going to slide in and out. So I went ahead and used that high heat, high bond tape, again by 3M. It works really good. This tape is the same tape that I stuck those letters for my signs on my truck, and they're still holding today. High heat, high bond, 3M tape, double-sided, works good on a lot of things. And it holds those signs on for nearly 2 years now. It's holding this little tiny micro switch on the roller onto the arm of the micro switch there, and I went ahead and coated the top of that flange there, and then I set the box right on it. and then I was able to slip my power supply in there. I tested that before I neatened up and put all my leads on there, because I had to plan not only the leads that are going to come down through this blue sheath here, but also I wanted my power cord and my computer USB port to be able to plug into this unit as well. So I had to create a hole in the side of the box there. Now, all the leads for the motors and everything else were long enough to get up here, but the leads for the limit switches were not. They shorted the length of the limit switch wiring in relationship to the motor wire, so I had to extend those wires to be able to come up here and be comfortable with this, which is no big deal. It was just something that I had to go through and do it. So I soldered on extensions onto those, and then I started playing around and neaten up all the other wiring that had to come up to my power supply for this thing, so then I could get this wrapped up and look presentable, be easy to clean. If this gets dusty or whatever, I want to be able to maintenance it, and that's the whole idea. It's out of my way. I'm not tripping on leads on the floor. So that was kind of what I was looking for. Okay, after I had my power supply up here and everything was kind of neatened up here, I really focused on my vacuum, and I had the hose brought in. I had these old rings that I had screwed up on the ceiling, and they kind of held my fishing rod, so I went ahead and I had a few of those laying extra, so I kind of screwed them up there so I could just snake my hose through there and it could lay kind of loosely, because I was kind of unsure about it. So it's a temporary that might be a permanent. Occasionally we end up having those. It's working out fine right now. So the hose was hanging down here. Now I needed to get some kind of suction around my bit. Now, I didn't do a whole bunch of research or whatever on anybody else's suction devices or anything on there. I just kind of, what's at hand? What can I create on here? So I started looking at what I'm going to grab a hold of to move with my cutter, and that's what gave me the idea of coming in here and creating the clamp to the Z-axis back plate there. And I also had the hose and a nozzle here that had a swivel here, so I kind of let's play with that diameter there. So then I hunted through my aluminum material, because I knew I wanted to have something lightweight. So aluminum's the lightest material that I have that's readily available. And I found a piece of aluminum Schedule 80 tube, and I was able to go ahead and machine it down on the outside to fit this diameter here and still have enough wall thickness when I was done to not have it collapse or have a wimpy ID. And this diameter also was just about the size of the inside of this 1.25 inch clear hose, which I got down at Ace Hardware down here, and I forget what they wanted for it, but it was some crazy thing like $5 a foot or something. And so I cut off a foot of it and I brought it home, and I kind of got it to slip on here. Now I said, all right, I need to be able to clamp on here, so I just made a slot with a groove, and I thought, hey, I needed to be able to have this thing adjusted. So I went in, and remember, I had a camera that I followed along on the plasma cam, and this is that same arm. All I did was incorporate that block to have the threads that normally would grab onto, and then I took a 1/4 inch bolt and drilled and tapped into this section here. Now here's some pictures of this piece being made on the mill, and I freehanded this. I knew what bore I needed, so I did the bore. then while it was held in there, the square things, I was able to put it in the vise and I described a few lines on it, and I eyeballed it, and I gave it what I call the diamond cut or whatever. Anytime you're putting any kind of a cut, an angle cut, I just personally call that a diamond cut. You know, you're cutting facets or whatever you want on the product. So I kind of came out, it was slender here and there, just gave it a little character, but it got rid of some weight. All I needed to have was this diameter here. I mean, it could have had more lightning holes or something else into it, but it was just quick, it was freehand, and it was in the mill, and you know, I made a great part and I made a mess, and so it was a success. After I did that, I got this angle cut and I got this thing held up in here, and then I had this way up in the air, and I was kind of projecting where I needed this to come in, and I planned it out to be horizontal, come in on the side. I was kind of planning out how far or close it came over here to this side here, what my limitations are going to be. And this adjustment here let me really kind of put this anywhere I wanted to put it. But I figured that I wanted to be close to it. How can I get this thing around there and suck as much as I can from that area and still not have it trip up on the part? Now, I've only tested it out on flat material so far, and it's worked fantastic, and you'll see that in the video. But I wanted to have plenty of adjustment on it, and if I had to come up even more, I had to have the little collet and everything else pass through it. So I created a hole big enough for that to actually go down through there. So I could raise this up, this could be up higher, the bit could be down lower. There's a lot of variables that I haven't even practiced yet. They just haven't come in about. But where I'm at now, I'm pretty happy. So that's basically how I came about just thinking of how to hold the hose for the vacuum system in this machine here. All right, now here's a glimpse of what I did for the Y-axis drag chain, or the drag chain that parallels the Y-axis. Was to go ahead, and because I was short a little bit of table out here, but I also you do have to come up 3/4 of an inch, because that end there is mounted 3/4 of an inch up off the deck, and so I went ahead and I grabbed about an inch of my table and created this 3/4 by, and I cut it out to the width I wanted here, just so it was outside. I always had a little bit of extra material out here so that this could lay on here, and when it tracks right along here, and it hangs, and it doesn't hang down, it doesn't create any excess stress on that end like it would at this end over here on the motor itself for the carriage drag chain. And I just put it in with a couple screws, and it sits right here. But the whole base of the X-carve slides up to it and locates and registers to this part of the table here, and so it's located and locked in to the tabletop at this position right here. So this supports the chain, but it also helps lock in my X-carve to the tabletop. Alright, I'm cutting out this little practice thing here for a little gift for Vanessa. It's basically happy birthday, Vanessa. But I've been watching my vacuum and my little holder, and my area is nice and clear, clean. This has been cutting for over 30 minutes now. Shape is 1/8 of an inch deep, and plywood does chip at the edge, but I'm not looking at that. I'm just watching the functions and how the vacuum system's working, and then I'll get on to my first project that I've been working on as far as the planning. But I wanted to see it in action, so no complaints here. It's doing its job. Okay, we just sent in the head all the way back home. There we are. And our project here is completed. And that's our test, and I do not see a single mistake in it, other than I use plywood and it chips and stuff like that at the edges there. But that's why I use this piece, and I clamped this down, and it actually, I clamped it down in this direction because it was warped like this, so that I knew I had a positive in here. Okay, I had an old video with my Note 4 and I cut it short because it had music in the background, and I didn't want to play any music on the video that wasn't copyrighted to me. Even though you couldn't hear it, it's still in the background, and I just know that somebody would call it out. This is actually the finished product of my very first test. This font was in the easel programming, and all I did was type out what I wanted, and that was my very first test on here. And I picked a depth, so I think it had multiple passes, maybe 4 or 5 passes to get it to depth. And it is plywood, so it has little chippy edges and things like that. I was not worried about that. I was just wanting to put the machine through the motions. And I also wanted to see the control of depth from where you come over and you touch off, and then come in as far as the uniformity of the depth all the way across this big sheet here, and setting one depth for the happy birthday and one depth for the Vanessa. I didn't set them far enough apart from each other to actually tell by eye, but by the veneers it actually tells me that I'm consistent, and I'm close to those depths that I set. Meaning close, within 3/4 thousandths of those depths, using a piece of plywood, and this is just as warped as it was when I first started. I think it was warped in the other direction, and that's why I carved it on this side here, so that when I held it down with my toe clamps, it was actually it had pressure against the bottom, and now it's tend to warp the other direction. But I've cut the relief in on this side, so it only makes sense that it's going to reverse warp in that direction there. Just simple thinking there. All right, that brings us up to date with our X-carve and where we're at today. And what I like to do now is go ahead and start talking about our next video. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our Get Her Done logo, and we're going to create a project using that. We're going to take this, we're going to create a drawing. We're going to go ahead, and one thing that I learned cutting out Happy Birthday Vanessa was that a tool path is pretty comparable to a kerf cut in the plasma cam technology. The width of material that will automatically be gone with the cutter you're using or the torch you're using is pretty well the same. So we're going to create a drawing that's going to be tool bit size friendly, meaning the picture we're going to take will be easily recognized, matching diameters of outside edges, corners, and the shapes of the cutout itself. We're going to create a drawing, and we're going to take that drawing and we're going to put it into Inkscape, and we're going to create an SVG format that we can then import to the easel software, and we're going to create a cutout. This is the X-carve material bundle that I got with my machine here, and I was able to choose a couple different things here on what they sent me. And we have a piece of wood here. I don't know if that's birch type of plywood there. It looks like plywood. I'm looking in on the side there. Either that or it's the grain of the wood there. And this here is sort of a fluorescent plastic. And this material here is what we're actually going to cut out our project on. And this is two color HDPE black on white, 12 by 12 by 1/4 inch thick. Now I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to create the roundness. So this is going to be my first project that I'm going to try to actually cut out a shape. So I don't know if we're going to put something down or if I'm going to use cut right into the wasteboard or the backboard here itself. I don't know, but we're gonna create this, and we're gonna create it in an oval as big as we can get it on this one piece right here, and that's gonna be on our next video there. All right, I thank you very much, guys at Inventables. Thanks for the opportunity to give a review and have the fun of putting this thing together and getting to use your product. Your instructions and everything else to put this thing together were fantastic, and I hope a couple of the other things that I added on here is enjoyable. I've been trying to do this without really looking at any other outside influence, meaning except for the one strip there to hold the drag chain that was kind of posted on my Facebook, so I did check that out there, but I'm not looking at anybody else's drawings or programs or any of their projects going on there, because I want to shoot this as me and the X-carve machine and up to my first project, and kind of playing it from an amateur's point of view, and just taking it one step at a time, being able to learn how to use this machine with what the Inventables and X-carve forums, community, and support make happen. And I want to keep it that way, so it's really it's an honest review. You see it, I've got it running, and I'm able to control it, and I'm actually looking forward to my next project there. So until next time, let's get her done.